This is the Law Live Audio Wrestling, and I want to take a second here just to give you a brief little synopsis, if you will, of the person that I'm sitting down with now. We've known each other than I think even we realize how long we've known each other. I've known this man since before wrestling, believe it or not. It's a small world, and kind of side story is like, where I was born, he lives, and where he was born, I live. And we've done this juxtaposition in our lives almost, but there's so many similarities that I'm super excited to sit down with this man. This is a man who is, he's been in damn near every single company around the world, and probably a few made up ones that are on his Wikipedia that nobody even fucking knows about. I'm talking about the original Sinn. I'm talking about Kizarny. I'm talking about the man now, yeah, the crimson masked demon at times. I'm talking about Sinn Bodhi. Sinn, brother, thank you for joining me here. How you doing?
Oh, Tid, it's been way too long. Thank you for having me. Before we got on air, I was just impressed at how well aged, like fine wine and stinky cheese, you look. You look so young,
like Limburger.
Yeah. I joke with everybody. I'm like, man, the years have not been kind. Like, neck down, I'm in good shape. Neck up, I'm semi-sane. But like, I used to look like Jack Sparrow. Now I look like Doink the Clown, bang George Steele. So I'm like, with a hint of Santa Claus. So I'm like, what the heck and heck?
It's so crazy because you watch it even over time on yourself, right? You know, the beard starts to go and you get that one little gray hair, and then that gray hair turns into a bit of a stripe, and then you wake up one morning, poop, and the whole thing is just gray, and you're going, what happened?
You're Clint Eastwood sitting on the lawn with a Gran Torino and a shotgun. Yeah, overnight.
It's overnight. Crazy. I don't get it, right? So dude, I mean, it's
way back at FCW, like when I had like the bleach blonde hair, very D. Schneider meets Michael Hayes meets Rip Rogers, you know. But I would do the beard, and I didn't want to like chop it all up extra weird because like Jeff was, you know, doing that. But I just was like, every time I'd see a gray hair, I'm like, well, if I there, and then the next thing you know, I've got these tiger stripes. So I'm trying to hide it on purpose, by accident, on purpose, and all of a sudden, and then hence that whole weird Jack Sparrow kind of thing just came because I was kayfabing gray hairs.
You've been growing yours long enough. You know that it doesn't color the same side. It doesn't grow evenly on. You know what I mean? One side grows a little faster than the other, so you got to get past that whole stage of bullshit. You know, right? So,
if I shave down, like Jake the Snake's got that like proper like man's man, like steel wool 5 o'clock shadow at 1 o'clock that he could like literally rub paint off a car if he just, you know, brush skied it or something. But I've got that soft, like, I don't know, I'll call it the Monsanto face. I'll blame it on all of whatever the heck all the mad scientists are putting in the food and the water. But like, I've got such a soft baby face, and it's all patchy, like Keanu Reeves patchy. It's just so long that it just kind of just, it's just a bukkake of hair. So,
but with the beard, you're like poster child for the militia. You know what I mean? So like, keep it going, brother.
You know, it's funny, but we were talking about this, not me and another wrestler the other night on a plane, and we're talking about that. This has been a wonderful force field out of the ring in my travels. Like, I meet so many wonderful people, and I've seen so many wonderful places thanks to pro wrestling. As Gangrel would say, wrestling owes me nothing; I owe it everything.
Yeah.
But traveling like this, when things weren't so great or aren't so friendly, this sort of, again, I'm not Chuck Norris or anything. I can defend myself. You know, I can sports entertain, or I can, you know, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But this is such a great deterrent. I think it's my daunting good looks is what I really have arrived at. Just like everybody's like, man, don't mess with that Brad Pitt stunt double.
This is what I was saying. Like, everybody's afraid to walk up to that really, really hot chick. You know what I mean? Because you're like, there's no point. He's just going to get shot down, right? Well, that's what I thought too, the same thing. But really, this is unapproachable as fuck. Like, you look across there and you're like, he may ask me for something that I'm going to be forced to give him, and I don't know if I want to give that up just yet, right? So
you know what?
It works out great.
It's not blowing smoke or anything. It's just 100%. I vividly remember when I like was first around you, you know, and I was a bouncer and all that stuff at that time and everything. And I just, I mean, you're a tall dude, you're a big dude, but you always had that sort of that resting bitch face where you looked mean, but you were so friendly. And I could see how that could be really off-putting. Like I remember, like I rolled up on you respectfully, and we've always, I don't think we've ever had an ill word. I can't remember what I ate for breakfast, but
Yeah.
you know, over a quarter of a century, I don't ever remember, you know, but I remember, you know, me having an argument with somebody here or there, you having an argument with somebody there, here or there. And I remember we were both always, you know, pride ourselves on being, you know, trying to solve something as opposed to like, and just
100%.
getting all
100%. I've always been a big proprietor of like, because this mouth was put here for a reason. It wasn't just,
sure.
you know, to make the rest of it look decent. As probably one of the things that you'll learn from doing security, right? Because you could go out there as being a doorman and bouncer, whatever you want to call it at the time. You could go out there and you could bust heads every single night, but it gets old, it gets repetitive. And then eventually you're stuck looking over your shoulder all the time.
Yep.
So you got to learn how to talk to these people, you know what I mean? And talk to them in a manner that they don't feel disrespected. Right. And this is where
Yep.
I learned it, you know, at a younger age. And it's, I mean, for yourself, myself, it's helped tremendously because if you can, I don't think that there's enough of that left anymore. And I think that a lot of that has to do with social media, dude. Tell me if I'm wrong or not, right? Because it's really easy just to fucking, man, I hate you, fuck you, tweet, send, blah. But if I call you and I'm like, what's the problem? What do you mean? I don't have a problem. I'm just talking online, right? It's gone.
Yeah, jacked, super jacked keyboard keys.
Right?
Warriors. Not much else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. I think, and you could take text out of context, and people are safe, you know, on the other side of their screen, on the other side of the world, wherever they are, you know, not realizing like, hey, you're interacting with another human and vice versa. So like, even if somebody's just trying to be a troll and look for a response, they've got to sort of understand like, that's a person, you know, like, it would be easy to say, and this is just a silly example again for lack of coffee, but like somebody could go online and hear Justin Timberlake's music and go, I hate Justin Timberlake. And I think, well, that's kind of a strong stance to take. Maybe like he's not my musical cup of tea, but I can appreciate that he probably busted his ass, probably worked really hard. He's probably good in his genre of music that I don't understand, you know, and I'm sure he probably, with between traveling and agents and managers and all sorts of dodgy business, I'm sure he's probably had to dodge so many metaphoric bullets. So to say you hate the guy just because you don't like his song, just realize like there's probably a hardworking, halfway nice human being under that whole facade that you see as a, you know, a Hollywood face. And I'm not taking any sides with the Hollywood guys. I think, you know, I think these days with all the political landscape and everything, who knows? I'm smart enough to know I don't know much. But I think so many people are heels when they look like baby faces and vice versa and up and down. And again, I'm smart enough to know this planet is like the ghetto of the galaxy. Yeah. So on the best of days with great people in said ghetto, said intergalactic ghetto, but a ton of shitheads too. So I think like when wrestling fans, or like you said, like a patron in a bar, you know, if they're just being shitty to you, or if you're being shitty to them, you know, there's a human on the other side of that situation. So handle it. Like I literally remember in Toronto bouncing, me and Bill Scullion would bounce every night together. We were in some gnarly stuff, you know, together, and only at the last resort. But I remember like always, you know, being on the door and people walk in, and I would look them right in the eye. I would never just look away from them like I'm just you know, shuttling them like cattle. I would look at everybody and be like, have a great night in there, you know. So I think psychologically it's very hard for somebody, you know, an hour or two down the road to be a shithead to somebody that was nice to them.
And we've watched that change too, right? Because like when you started off in the business, when you started off in the wrestling business, there wasn't, for myself anyways, email wasn't a thing to a lot of promoters out there.
No.
You know what I mean? You had to get on the phone and you still had to call them. You still had to call people on the telephone to talk to them. And then it just I'm just going to send so-and-so a text and say, hey, I'm going to be in the, like, it's changed so much.
Well, and being, I think both of us being sort of students of psychology, and I would always kind of joke and say, there's no such thing as wrestling psychology. There is just a psychology applied to wrestling.
Right.
So, you know, when you're trying to handle situations, if you're not trying to figure out the best course of action, then you're probably going to be doomed, you know, like if you can't figure out how to communicate.
It's funny you say that, because I've had this conversation with other people. And I think me and Sean Spears were talking about it not too long ago. And
There's another face for radio right there.
right? No kidding. And we got into it like we were talking about what was I just gonna fucking say? God damn it, you threw me off. You do that.
Sorry, brother. It's the Brad Pitt-esque good looks. It's a curse, man. You Sean Spears, face for radio. You were talking to him the other day. You got into it.
What the hell are we getting into though? I love when I go blank like that because my brain is all over the place.
It's
just
all good.
It's one of those like, okay, so it's
one of those I get it. I get dropped in my head for I've been getting
this
dropped
is what
in my
happens.
head for over a quarter of a century. I get
this is what happens after 50, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you know it's weird. In so many ways, I like me and Adam Edge were talking about this the other day. Like, I don't feel 50. Like, it's just a weird number. You know, like if I was to put the Horace Hogan, the Macho Man beard cave Faber into my beard, I would knock probably another decade off. And if I shaved, I would look like a 12-year-old Russian hooker. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would be, I'd look young.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a whole lot of wrinkles, or I'm not, you know, all beat up like an old rat rod in the sun. But I mean, maybe a little bit compared to an earlier photo, but all things considered, like at my home here in Death Valley, about an hour out of Vegas, I'll have a wrestling student or two come up once in a while to help me, you know, clean out my chicken coops or my goat stalls or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll literally pull up in my truck and I will grab out of the back of from the feed store, I'll grab like a big 50-pound bag of oats or, you know, whatever, and slug it over my shoulder, grab another 50-pound bag and slug it over my shoulder. And these like 21-year-old, 25-year-olds like, how are you doing that, sir? You're so daunting. You know, and I'm like, just a dude, you know.
You just do it. If you spend so many years doing it, you just do it, right? And you've been down there, you've been down living in the sun for a minute now, right? Yeah. So there was a big transition. There's a huge transition. You know what I mean? I remember what I went through for me moving up here, those first couple of winters, and even now, still to this day, it is the most disgusting time of the year. You know what I mean? To be in the dead of winter. That's something you came from. And now you're down there in the, you know, there's still, no, don't get it twisted. I still think there's those 3 months out of the year down there that you don't like going outside, but that's summertime. That's dead of summer where it's just fucking crazy. So you went through that. Yeah. You've gone through like transition after transition. You've transitioned yourself. Like we're talking, you're doing sideshow stuff, right? When you're younger, you're drawing cartoons for comic books. You know what I mean? Which is actually, I think the first time we had met was I was doing some stuff with Jeff Merrick and Mike Wixon at an office build. We were doing media stuff together down on Queen Street, and you and Adam came down with your Fred the Possessed Flower comic book. Right? I think I was one of the first. This was way before anything, right? So I wanted to ask you about that. Obviously Fred is not around anymore.
No.
I was always fascinated though, because it was a comic book with the claymation covers.
Yep.
Do you still have the claymation stuff?
No, they degraded pretty quick. Yeah. I didn't take such good care of them. They never made it out of Canada. They were long crumbled before I migrated.
Have you thought about doing stuff? Because I know that you're doing like you're repurposing the LGN stuff, and you've always been huge artistic. More artistic,
jackass of all trades,
right?
Jackass of all trades.
Yeah. Have you thought about bringing them back?
Yeah, even Adam and I even kind of were kicking around the idea of like once the wheels fall off properly and we're not, you know, putting on knee pads every week, we thought to do a kids book together, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
I think it would be a lot different than Fred, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we're both like, we're both dads now, you know, we're both, you know, kid oriented and stuff. And you know, I think, and Adam is like, so the other day at his house, I said asshole. We're just talking, you know, me and Beth and Adam and the kids were running around, and he's like, and I'm like, oh, sorry. You know, or whatever. So around here, like my wife swears like a drunk sailor. So she says stuff that would make Andrew Dice Clay blush. So I'm, you know, I always try to be respectful, whether I'm traveling, you know, whether it's overseas or wherever it is, like when in Rome, I try to kind of, you know,
blend,
you know, I try to, you know, make the best or whatever. And so of course, and I mean, when him and I are sitting there, you know, having a conversation or whatever, of course we're cussing like two cavemen for sure. But around his kids, like he's a no swear zone, you know. So he's like, you even got to be careful when you text me just in case my kid opens up the phone. I'm like, no problem, I got you, no sweat. But that's important to him, so I try to respect it. It just the A word,
Dude,
slip
I
it.
don't listen. I don't know how any of you do it. I don't have kids. I never had kids. I mean, you know,
Through the reckoning.
and I'm cool with it. You know what I mean? Like literally, I remembered what my lineage is, and it has to stop someplace. I don't want that passed down to anybody else. You know what I mean? But then I remember that, you know, I did the stupid thing and opened up a wrestling school, and I teach all of those guys. So lineage of your assholioness still carries on. It seems like, right? You
Yes.
did the same fucking thing.
Yes.
Why?
Um, you know what? I never set out to be a coach, but my mom was a school teacher for the longest time. And she was sort of like that Mary Poppins, Mrs. Doubtfire kind of teacher in a time when stuff was really strict, you know, rack them across the knuckles with a ruler. And she was always like, well, let's see why they are misbehaving or why they are not understanding or why. Like she was always trying to sort of Mary Poppins, you know, swim into their brains and figuring out how they needed to receive whatever the info was. So she would always tell me stuff like, and again, you know, nowadays there's every, I don't know, mental disorder under the sun, and I'm not negating any of them. I'm making fun of it, but I'm just saying like now there's a thing for everything.
We have names for all of it.
Yeah, back in the day you were either, and I'm just saying it frankly, like I don't know how else that they would say it, but back in the day you were a bad. They would put the kids in a bad kid class or like the special ed class. That was it.
You're either in the building or the annex.
Yeah,
you know, the little trailer.
Or sometimes they smash both of those together. Sometimes that was almost one and the same as far as, you know, the education system would go. So my mom would say stuff like, to give all these kids, 20 kids, one piece of information, you might have to tell those 20 kids 20 different ways, right? Because they're all individuals. So they're going to receive it, how they're going to receive it. And you have to figure out how to sort of take the temperature of the room, how to see what will relate, what won't relate, and all that stuff. So I think I kind of, maybe by osmosis or DNA or some other icky process, maybe you got my mom's communicative skills, maybe. And like for me, I like to joke a lot because I remember how nervous I was, you know, listening to Hutchinson, you know, teach us and stuff like that, or even, you know, that's still kind of carried over with Dr. Tom or Al Snow or any of those guys, you know. And I wasn't some stupid little kid. Like I was a fucking bouncer. I was a bodyguard. I was a tournament fighter. So I wasn't like physically worried about it. I was just such a wrestling fan that I was so enamored, and I didn't want to upset anybody. I didn't want to disappoint anybody. So I'm like, I got to pay attention. I got to get to, you know, and it was always such a nervous way to learn. So I just remember thinking, as I'm going to try to teach people, you know, I'm not a softy coach and I'm not a ball buster coach. I'm Polish. I'm in the middle, not too hot, not too cold, just right. And you got to just sort of figure.
There always seems to be a time and a place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have
to
establish that.
The way, and looking, you know, being this gorgeous, you know, it's very intimidating for people. So I try to joke a lot, so that way maybe the humor will kind of open up the cracks in the skull, and the knowledge will accidentally seep in a little bit better than it might. So I'm kind of a guy like that.
So you're down there, you're working with those guys. They call you up in one of the craziest, I can remember when it happened, one of the craziest call-ups. They call you up to get on the show, and they bring out this character, Kizarny, who's doing the thing. And
Zoom type. Yeah.
And I know that you and I have talked about this in private before. It had to be one of the most, in my opinion, wrong ways to bring you out.
Sure. I mean, and who am I to say, you know, I'm not the billionaire, you know, that's got a giant company at his disposal. I'm just this little asshole in spandex trying to make his way through the world, duck clotheslines and suplex his way through planet Earth, you know. So I chose to look like I always like to kind of just evolve visually. I was very much, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like sort of referenced by the Undertaker. Like, you know, first he was a mortician, then he was a cowboy, then he was a biker, then he was a devil, then he was a different kind of cowboy, then he was, you know, this and that. So, but he was still always Undertaker. So I kind of felt like, well, this is me. again, I'm not some a-hole that just went to the mall and got his face painted. Like, I'm a legit circus strongman, a legit, you know, sideshow geek magician, sideshow freak, whatever you want to call it. I'm legit, you know, back in the day, you know, bodyguard, bouncer, tournament fighter, pro wrestler. So there's just, that's like the weirdest mix of mixed martial arts ever. Like, when you say mixed, like, I think people always just kind of go, yeah, MMA, but they don't realize, like, you know, the KFC stands for Kentucky Fried. Like, you're just saying KFC to make it sound a little more healthy, but it's Kentucky Fried. You know, so mixed martial arts isn't just MMA, it is mixed. So, I mean, especially if you watch back in the earliest days, why they called it mixed martial arts, you know, you're seeing some 7-foot Dutch samurai against some 400-pound brother, you know, it was just a giant
whatever
episode of Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, you know, it was just crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So you do the time, they let you go. And then you go through this stage of, I'm sure, like everybody does, you know what I mean? Like, okay, what am I going to do? You get back on the horse, right?
Yep.
But Kizarny wasn't going to be a thing, right? Because that was the WWE thing. What made you, what was the process? What was the process for you coming up with the new name? Because, I mean, I've been outside of one match, I've been Notorious TID my entire wrestling career, right? Sure. Your brain's wired a little differently. You're more out there, more all over the place. You know what I mean? With your artistic stuff, what was the process? How did you go from Kizarny to Sinn?
So I was Sinn first. Ron Hutchinson, he would always kind of tell us, hey, when you start, you're going to start as a babyface. That way you can be led by a heel. So we're like, okay. And then,
so old school, such an old school, because same thing, right?
Yeah. And then so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes, Nick, he goes, we're super short on heels, so you're going to start as a heel. So I'm like, he goes, so think of a name. You're going on the next Apocalypse show in a week. I'm like, shit. So in all of my creativity, I had like just a complete brain fart. I couldn't think of anything because I was trying so hard to think. Like, I could think of Fred Bliss, Flower, all these weird things out of the top of my head. Boom, 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 no problem. But just trying to come up with one little name, it was just, I was beating my head against the wall. So what I came up with Sinn, and that just that. And I thought, in my own weird artsy fartsy kind of hippie-ish way, I thought, well, what's the one thing that binds all of us? Guys, girls, black, white, gay, straight, red, blue, different religions, agnostic, atheist, everything. Sinn. We all do bad shit. That's our one common ground. So I'm like, Sinn. So there you go. And then Ron was clever about it. And he goes, well, okay, I like it. That's fine. But we need something in front of it or behind it, because, like, if you just say Sinn, it's just like a one syllable thing. You're like, what? Sam, Stan, what is it? What?
Yeah.
You know, it'll fly by your ear real quick. So he wanted something to kind of slow it down. So he's like, what about, I think, he didn't call me Original Sinn. He called me something else. Well, I can't even think of my own name now. It was like something like, it was like the Diabolical Sinn or whatever it was. And then that kind of quickly became Original Sinn. And then just so that way it would kind of preface the word. So, like, even today when I say, like, you know, they're like, who are you? And I'm like, Sinn Bodhi. And they're like, what was that? And I'm like, Sinn, like the 7 deadlies, and Bodhi, like the tree. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they can kind of hear it, you know. So I was Original Sinn, and I was kind of, I mean, the Brood stuff was kind of, I think, just tapering down at the time. And, you know, I grew up with the
Well, froze up. Do we just lose him?
Yeah, he's froze.
He froze up on us. Give him a second.
surprise.
There you go. Sorry, I'm going to get you to go back about 5 seconds there because you completely froze up.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, I figured the Brood stuff was just tapering down. Mm-hmm. So I thought I would kind of do something along those lines, seeing as I grew up with the Brood. So I'm like, oh, why not? But it just didn't feel quite right, as I was just kind of trying to find myself. And it just kept on evolving. I would just try different stuff. I get very bored very quickly with everything. I'm just an artsy fartsy, perpetually discontent kind of a person, you know. But so I actually came up with Sinn Bodhi just before as I was getting hired, like, so when I got hired out of OVW, training under Al Snow and Danny Davis and Robert Gibson and Rick Rogers, Mike Bucci hired me, and then they were sending me down to Florida. So when I went to Florida, I thought, you know what? I look pretty flamboyant. Like, I had the blonde hair and the long braided tiger beard braids and all the Jack Sparrowy stuff, and it was just all weird and whatever. So I didn't want original Sinn. I wanted something that made the name sound less cartoony. Like, I wanted it to be almost like a biker handle or something, like, so I wanted a last name with it. And I always, since I was a kid, was enamored with the Point Break movie and Bodhi. So you never knew the character's actual name. The Bodhi was his nickname, the Bodhisattva. And Bodhisattva is Buddhist. It means without fear, greed, or delusion, which I thought that's awesome because that character was nothing but fear, greed, and delusion, you know? And I thought, yeah, man, I don't want to be a slave in a metal coffin on the highway. I want to do what I want, you know? So I really I like that sort of nomadic lifestyle. And maybe that's probably also what it kind of led me to wrestling, because really we're really just cowboys, you know, just trotting across Hell's Half Acre, doing what we want. Yeah. We do what we want. We go when we want. Do what we want. There's not a lot of jobs or anything that really allot for that these days. Like, you're really saddled to wherever you are. So there's like, if I want to go to Germany tomorrow, I'll go to Germany. If I want to go to Mexico, or I want to go to Toronto, or I want to go wherever, Detroit or St. Louis, we can just go. Or you can book a wrestling show there and go. So there's not a lot of vocations, I think, that allow for that. But anyway, so I visually had arrived at what Kizarny looked like the black beard, and that was before the gray started showing, and the bleach blonde hair was very much Michael Hayes, Rip Rogers. That was the black beard, blonde hair was very much those guys. I was always big fans of them, and Rip was one of my coaches.
that was like the wrestling look. When you saw that guy even down the street, you're like, there's no doubt. If your hair was like long and bleached blonde and you had a jet black beard to go with it, you were a professional fucking wrestler.
That's
and
right.
nothing else, right?
No. And it was weird. Like, you know what? On a side note, I never comprehended why everybody would see me and go, he's so weird. He's so weird. Like, I don't think I looked so weird. I just looked like Michael Hayes, or I looked like basically like a rocker.
Right. Yeah. It was. Wait till he comes back here. Froze up again. It's goddamn middle of the desert fucking stuff.
I was just a wrestler and some spandex and some bleach blonde hair, you know? So I don't know why everybody pursued it to be so weird. And before that, and during that, and after that, to this day, I don't set out ever to be weird. I set out to do what I want. And if that aligns with nobody or everybody or anything in between, so be it. I'm comfortable enough in my own skin just to do what I want. I think that's a very hard thing for a lot of people to do, and I'm not going to put myself over for it. It's just what I do. You know, I'm not like, well, you know, everybody likes this politician or that football team or this whatever, this TV show or this. If I like it, I like it. If I don't like it, I don't like it.
But I mean, you have to understand that, like, people look at you, and anybody who knows you and has followed your career and your life and stuff like that, you've had the luxury, so to speak, to be able to do that. Not a lot of people do. Not a lot of people take that road. Like, I want to be in a sideshow, so I'm going to be in a fucking sideshow. I want to be a professional wrestler, so I'm going to be a fucking professional wrestler. I want to live in the middle of the desert and fucking, raise goats. So that's what you do, right? Like, not a lot of fucking people, you know what I mean, actually follow through with something that might be a dream or a bucket list and stuff like that. You're living in Orangeville, Canada. You're living and then in Toronto or whatever. Like, what made you decide to be like, I've had enough. I'm going to go, spend the rest of my days in the middle of the fucking desert.
You know what? When I was a little kid, and I to this day, I'm then and now, and everything in between, I was always a dreamer.
Yeah.
I thought if you could dream it, just go fucking do it.
Yeah.
And I remember, I was always living in like a little, I'm sorry that this interview is going to be prefaced with chickens clucking or dogs barking. Like, when my dog sees the mailman, the little dog bows up, and it makes the big dog go like, yeah, mailman, fuck him, I'll go fuck get him. So anyway, what the heck was I saying? Where were we going? It's my turn to break up.
See what I'm saying? This over 50 bullshit. You were saying if you can dream it, then you should just be able to live it.
Yeah. So as a little kid, I wasn't like Adam and Jay, Edge and Christian. They were in town kids. Right. I was on the outskirts of town. So for me to go and play after school was always a note to get on this bus, and then to have my mom pick me up after she did her, her work, and then she had other work and all this kind of stuff. And so it was always, there was a lot of time when I was just by myself in this little ranch house in rural Ontario, Canada. And it gave me a lot of time to, watch cartoons, read comic books, watch wrestling, that kind of stuff. So I was in this weird little playland. Do you remember, I've tried to explain this to some Americans down here, but you remember that maybe it was like what's the animation place in Toronto there that did all those,
down by White TV there and that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
I think it was them that made it. Remember that little Wizard of Oz cartoon? Mm-hmm. Everybody has a funny face. Blah, 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 funny place. That thing, like, so I would watch that, and I just kind of got dreaming, thinking like, well, I don't want to be isolated here. And everything in the movies and cartoons and wrestling looks so grandiose. For my two little Canadian eyeballs sticking out of my little Canadian child's head, I'm like, man, look at the New York or LA or all these, or Texas, like looking at like the Cowboys in Texas or the Ninjas in Japan or the, the whatevers and whatever. It just was always so enamoring. And I'm like, man, I want to go see the world. So my first step was to kind of get rid of the blow the pop stand of the country and go to the city. So like I was really wanted to be in Toronto. So it was my earliest day that I could move to Toronto. I did. And then I was pretty much a city guy ever since. Like I went from Toronto, and after I trained with Ron Hutchinson, then I just kind of got in my car and started traveling. And actually that comic book you're talking about, Fred the Possessed Flower, it was like globally distributed from Diamond Comics, which paid for my first 2 years of just being on the road learning. So that really kind of financed my early wrestling adventure. And I would just like, again, even being a flaky young dude, I was still in that man mode of like, not going to be like asking people for rides or how do I get here or there? Like, if you're a grown ass man, get your fucking ass to work. Like, so I would get booked in Detroit or Nashville or wherever. I would just show up like a local. I was just, a no name guy. Pay me like a local guy. I'll get myself there. And then I just learned and I just absorbed, from guys like Bobby Eaton or Tracy Smothers, or just the list goes on, Pat Tanaka, the list goes on and on. Excuse me. And so I just did that. And then joking about arriving here, not now being out in Death Valley feeding goats. So for the longest time living in Henderson in Las Vegas, we literally, not to fragment this story with all these weird little side tiny stories, but like, so for years, my wife and I lived in the Keep Sweet sex compound of Warren Jeffs. So for you humans who are listening or watching that do not know who Warren Jeffs is, he is a Mormon polygamist cult leader that's in jail for life. And we rented his property, not from him. We were actually an old-timey baseball player, like an old-timey, like he was so old, he makes old look young. And he has a bunch of properties across Vegas, and he had this place, and he couldn't rent it or sell it. I guess, when something weird happens in a place, it devalues the property. But I guess now over the last couple of years, that property has skyrocketed and just people are moving into Vegas in droves, and I appreciate that. I moved, for greener
100.
pasture from another place. So I can't fault anybody. I just, and I really try to politically behave myself. I think a lot of really nonpartisan ideas, like I'm an idea guy. I don't think like, I don't like this politician, but if he or she has a good idea, I'm open-minded enough to go, I don't like them, but I like that idea. Or I do like this guy or girl, but I don't like that idea.
Right.
So I understand why people move from New York to Florida or from California to Las Vegas or the other way around, or like from blue to red or from red to blue. I just think my biggest thing is like, again, when in Rome. So if I'm going to go to England, like I've traveled to England with other wrestlers who are great guys, but they would complain about everything. Like, the soda pop isn't as big over, the beverages aren't as big or this or that, or you can't get this. So a lot of the England guys would be like, well, fuck off back to the US.
Right. Yeah.
I enjoyed England. So I would just find all the, the ways to sort of like when in Rome. Yeah. So I think like if I was going to go travel to New York, which I literally was just there a couple of weeks ago, like I'll do it their way. If I'm going to be in Florida, I'll do it their way. Like, I'm not going to go to one place. I'm not going to go to your house, tell you how to set your table. Oh,
Right.
shit, I don't like your curtains. You should get different curtains, you know,
Right.
or you should have different food in the fridge. Like, it's your fucking house. So I think, like, if you're leaving from California to come to Vegas, leave whatever the fuck you voted in behind you. Don't be such a narcissist and bring that problem with you and bring it for other people. Come to where you're coming, because that's what's there, and vice versa. And that goes blue and red, red and blue, you know, either way. And so I was always very adaptable to be in different places. Like, I've stayed lots of red places, lots of blue places. And I always have these arguments with my little brother, and who I very much think of as Niles Crane. So who I love. I genetically have to love him. He's a great guy. He's a smart and kind guy. We joke and say, like, we arrive at the same conclusions with very different paths.
Right.
You know, like, we want to see, Mochi, what is it? Is it the mailman? Is he here to drop off diabolical letters? Or maybe an Amazon guy or something? Maybe a cat or a dog walking, or kids walking by? Sorry, my little on a completely other weird, again, different offshoot story. So my wife and I sort of unofficially rescue critters up here. So we've got all these silly, every creature here on this funny farm is just like their old man, just out to lunch. Dude, you know,
it's funny. And I'm going to interrupt you here for a quick second, because the similarities with us are ridiculously baffling. If you think about it, like, I grew up in that same kind of small, you know, area mentality, right? Because I didn't live in North Las Vegas. I was born there. And then we moved to Washington State, and we lived in Washington State. I lived in the sticks. Like, the closest city was 40 miles away, type of thing. I wanted nothing more than to get into the city. I didn't want to, as a kid, I needed to see things. It's on TV. I got to see these lights. I got to experience all of this stuff. And so I wanted nothing more than to get to the city. Now, as I get older, I want nothing more. Like, I'm literally talking to my mom right now, who has a couple of properties out in Moapa Valley, about, you know, taking one of those off of their hands and going back there. The problem I have right now is I have 7 dogs. I have 7 fucking dogs that are, you know as well as I do, make it kind of tough to travel across the border, because then you've got to do the drive, and the drive from here down to down there is a little daunting, right? Yeah, it's a little fucking daunting. So, but that is the plan, and I get it. So everything that you're saying about, like, you want to be out there and just, you know, rescue. I've told my wife, because my wife's the same thing. I've got a dog with a nice an apple-headed, long-haired Chihuahua with a hair lip. I've got a Shih Tzu with 3 legs. I've got, somebody tried to make a miniature Labradoodle, so his front legs, he sits like a hot rod. You know what I mean? His front legs aren't really there and stuff like that. Like, we're in the same thing. It's the island of misfit fucking dogs. You know what I mean? And it's, so I get it. Is the animal thing you? Is it your wife? Was it a combination that brought you two together? Like, how did it, you know?
The latter.
I know how it was
the latter,
for me.
for sure. We're both softies when it comes to the critters. I like humans just fine, but I like critters way more. My wife is really just not a human person at all. She's the happiest angry person you're ever going to meet. I've literally used this example 1,000 times. She is the chicken hawk to my foghorn leghorn.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so when I'm sort of being a passive Canadian, oh, it's okay, Mr. Promoter. Yeah, it's okay. Give me a middle seat on the flight. Give me the whatever. It's fine. But she's like, no, see, Sin needs this. See, no, give him the bowl of wood Smarties. See, you know, all this kind of. She's always being my bodyguard. You know, she is the Kevin Costner to my Whitney Houston. You know,
that's hilarious. It's funny because how long have you guys been together now?
About 10 years.
Okay, so totally long enough. Same thing. Like, me and my wife been together for, holy fuck, 24 years going on.
That's
just past 23. Right,
dude. I'm a big mark for happily ever after. I think people that can sustain a long relationship, to me, like, for what it's worth, for me, I think that's awesome, because that just says you're a grown ass dude that knows how to communicate and care for somebody, and vice versa with the lady or whoever it is, whatever. If you're married to another dude or a squirrel or a whatever, fine, whatever. But the two parties involved, I think if they can hear each other and understand each other and have each other's back, I think that's honorable and cool as fuck.
But she's the more passive one, obviously. I don't know if you've noticed or not. I kind of have a big boisterous demeanor. So there's kind of
that's what, like, you always seem so, you know, you look like a big kind of scary biker to me, but you were always patient and articulate, and patient. I think so was the most impressive part, because you're always clever, but I think it'd be easy for a dude your size and looking the way you look just to be like, this was going to be,
Right.
But instead we're very amicable, and I like to think of myself the same way. Like
Yeah.
I could probably easily go, no, we're doing this, and I could probably
Yeah.
get away with that a lot. I know not ever.
There's no longevity in that kind of a attitude on life, right? But I'll notice sometimes every once in a while, my wife will like, she'll blurt out with something that sounds exactly like would have come out of my mouth. You know what I mean? And it's almost like that same kind of feeling you get when one of your students at your school does something completely perfect inside of the ring, and you're like, fuck yeah, I'd made that.
Yep.
And so it's got to be the same way the other way around. I just haven't experienced that one yet. I can't imagine. How many animals you sitting with right now?
I've got so this little critter that's squeaking and hooting and hollering in the distance. Her name is Mochi. She is a pit wawa. If you could figure that shit out.
Please tell me
like
please tell me the dad was the Chihuahua.
I hope so. So she was, out of all the critters we have, she was the worst off rescue that we got. I don't even want to take this interview on such a negative, disgusting note of what she prevailed through, but let's just say it was disgusting.
Yeah.
And so she's a sweet, she's the smartest one we have for sure. Like she is clever, but due to head trauma from what she survived, she goes from 0 to hero really quick. Like her medulla oblongata is no bueno. So she just, she hears a noise or something. She's like, what the fuck's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And she turns into that bulldog from Tom and Jerry, where she's like, like looking around. And so she'll see like a cat outside or a kid walking down the street from school, or, something. And there's not a whole lot of people around here. So I even want to be more out in the sticks than I am, but like we're on a small ranch on a little acre. And so these properties out here on the edge of Death Valley, they're all about acre big properties or whatever. So there's neighbors, but they're
far enough away that you don't. Yeah, exactly.
But close enough where my dog can bark at people walking by or whatever, which is rare.
It always happens. We've got another one. Her name is Teak. She looks like an Ewok. That's why she got the name Teak. You know what I mean? Because and she's completely blind. She only has one eyeball, but it doesn't work either. Like she's completely blind. The only reason I named her Teak was because my wife wouldn't let me name her Roomba, because that's how she gets around. She literally like will walk into a wall, turn the other way, right? But then she's got to be on your lap. She's got to be on your lap. You know what I mean? If you're sitting there, like she just but she'll do stairs. She can go up the stairs. She can go down the stairs. Like it's insane how, and that it's stuff like that makes me, just applaud animal nature, right? Like their ability to just overcome, because they have no fucking choice.
What was it? I don't know. It was like a movie, or I don't know. I want to even say, I could be making this up. Maybe my imagination is slipping into for my dreams or something. This could have been like Marilyn Manson saying this in some movie or something, but something about like, the scars or imperfections on people or creatures kind of helps define that, like helps make them all individual, like you said, like you got your one-eyed little critter there. I've got a one-eyed cat. We named her Mr. Fuji, and she is like she's like a dog. She'll just come on, I'm like, hey Fuji, come on, and she's like, yeah, where we go, or she's my poop buddy. Like every time I go to the bathroom, I'm like, come on Fuji, she's like, yeah, let's go. And she'll like she'll sit in my pants. I took a photo the other night and I sent it to my wife when she was at work, and it was just like an ankle shot of my drawers down by my ankles with my cat like in my shorts, and she's just like, that's the most cat thing I've ever seen.
It's like a duel between the one-eyed cat and the one-eyed snake. Is that what you had going on?
Yeah. Lots of that. But yeah, just it's super fulfilling. Like I cannot even put it into words. I'm an artsy fartsy guy, and it's beyond me to explain it. But like the most powerful, coolest thing I've ever experienced is like holding an innocent creature that is just blinking up at you with their Bambi eyes, and they trust you and they love you, and they just know like, this guy's going to feed me, this guy's going to protect me, this guy's going to keep me warm and keep me safe. Like just that loving, innocent look. Like I think people are kind of the heels and animals with the baby faces.
But we can't let people in public see that about us sometimes. You know what I mean?
Well,
Because
you know
they
what?
don't get it. They don't
interview-
get it. They don't get it. They don't understand that side of us
Sure.
sometimes.
Well,
you know what I mean?
so I was doing an interview with Vince Russo a little while ago, and we were talking about that. He's like, "Oh, you're such a softy, bro. You know, don't kill the gimmick."
Right.
And I'm like, I don't feel that I am killing the gimmick at all, because you know, you surround me by ropes and turnbuckles, I'll be pretty mean, you know. But I would not ever to a critter. So like, unless you booked me against Bambi, you're fucked. You know, like I'm not
Listen, even if the payday's well enough, fucking Bambi's getting it. Okay,
I'll do what I got to do. I'll feed my family however I got to feed my family.
Sorry, your mom left you, Bambi, but this isn't gonna fucking end well for you.
That's right. On that note, too, like, so I'll tell you, like, so something, and this could ruffle feathers wherever or whoever. I don't think not so much in for your Canadian viewers, but for a lot of American viewers, like in some ways, you know, very, very rural in my thinking, and very progressive also in my thinking. Like I am a constant contradiction of things.
Sure. Yeah.
Like about discussions about other wrestlers or whatever, but oh, you must be super red on this or super blue on that. I don't like this. I don't like this. I like this. I don't like, you know, and all this stuff.
You're Nevada. You're the state of fucking Nevada.
I'm kind of purple, I guess. Like,
right?
I wouldn't define myself as saying like I don't identify. And this is another extra ruffling of others. Like I don't identify as a white, straight, cis male. I identify as me. I have so much more to offer than just those bare bones of it. And if somebody else needs to cling to some basic lowest common denominator of branding, look inward. Don't bug me. Look inward. Go,
right.
You know, like if you're gonna, I always joke and be like, you know, Tid, if you're gonna hire Sinn Bodhi to wrestle for your show, and you're gonna hire this other so and so to wrestle for your show, and we're both pretty comparable, and one of us is a boob man and one of us is an ass man, does that really factor in? You're just going to pick the wrestler you like better, that's going to work harder, is going to do a better job or whatever. Like, I don't know the relevance of like what I like in the sack. Just be a good human and do the work.
100%.
That might sound so cringy to some people, but I'm at the point of this my life where I'm just like, I heard this TED Talk guy, this business guy, saying, it made me laugh, but it was poignant. He was just like, he was like, he's that dude with the white hair and the $5 billion suit, and he's always cussing. I can't think of his name. And he would be like, if anything I say to you guys offends you, fucking get mad at your parents for raising a
yourself.
Pussy.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so Al Snow said it really great with this one wrestling student that just couldn't comprehend that he was trying to help them. And Al just didn't put any heat on that person at all. He just openly just tweeted, I'm responsible for what I say, not for what you understand.
100%. 100%. And that goes back to almost when we were talking about like with social media stuff at the beginning of all this, like the how it gets lost in translation. If I look at words on a screen, I'm going to interpret it completely fucking different than what you may have meant when you wrote it. Right.
And conveniently, you're going to interpret it conveniently and swiftly with the minimal amount of work. Like if I texted you motherfucker.
Yeah.
So I could be like, hey, motherfucker, or I'd be like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know, two very different things. And if somebody is so obtuse to not understand where, why, how, like how the table is set on something, I think, again, I think both sides of the aisle news-wise do that all the time. They soundbite somebody to make them sound like a total douchebag. You know, everywhere. Like it's that whole, was it Running Man or whatever? It's like,
bring that
get
back.
to the top of where they're trying to help everybody. They just soundbite the shit out of them, you know. And now with all that crazy AI stuff, like I'm just like, oh my God.
It's so much like I get it from both sides because my family still lives there. So, and I'm still very much invested in my life in the United States as well. So I get that side of it, but then I get the luxury of watching it all go down from another country. You know what I mean? And it's absolutely baffling to me how overworked up humans become and get themselves when it comes to politicking. I
When
don't care.
when they're buying the storylines.
When they're buying the
fans in the
storylines,
stands eating their popcorn, cheering
Yeah.
and booing for their favorite heels and baby faces,
Yeah.
not realizing they're all in the same fucking locker room.
Yeah. And the storyline's going to change just like it
Yeah.
does in professional wrestling. And this is one of the
Sure.
things that I found, and I'm sure that you've used it. And we've talked about this. We talked about this earlier, where like everything wrestling related is, you find a way, you know, it's not so much wrestling related as much as it's life related. So do you find yourself, because I know I do, it's like if I have a situation out there in real life and I try to assess it, I try to analyze it, and I try to take care of it the same way. And then I'm going, oh, this is just fucking pro wrestling. It's just a pro wrestling scenario all over.
I was wearing that thing the other day. It was a collar and elbow shirt. Thank you, Rod Hicks. Thank you, Al. It was Life is a Work.
Right.
And it's all, and here's the thing is too, like I travel so much and very much in that Fight Club, Tyler Durden, disposable conversation, disposable friends. You know, you meet somebody in an airplane, you meet somebody standing in line at Starbucks or in line at the TSA or whatever. I've had wonderful conversations with people that were white, black, red, blue, guy, girl, straight, trans, gay, whatever. Wonderful conversations. And I've also seen, and it takes two to tango for sure, but I've seen awesomeness and I've seen shittiness in all those flavors too.
Yeah.
So just to like, when you have one-on-one of just about anything, I think you get the best of that person and you get the best exchange. Like I'm not like, again, what I'm just for sake of argument, let's just say you're super blue. Let's just say I'm super red. Well, if we both hear each other, or we're both, you're a white guy, I'm a black guy, or I'm a gay guy, you're a straight guy, or whatever. If we can just talk and we hear each other, then I think we can exchange ideas and we can both become smarter for those ideas. And we can discuss, we can debate, we can even argue. But if we hear each other through those things, great. But I mean, who needs to hear an ultimatum? Like, kid, porridge is the only thing you should eat for breakfast. If you don't eat porridge, you're a fucking idiot. You should be, canceled. Like fuck you. Maybe you might even like porridge, but you're going to say fuck you just because of how we set it all up.
It's like putting together a fucking match, Nick.
Yeah.
It's like putting together a match, right? You have to be able to communicate with the person that you're communicating with in front of your face, just to fucking make sure that you get the best thing possible for both of you. Life is a fucking work. I used to have shirts that said, "What's a work?" Right? On the front of them. Cause like, tell me, you're like, it's a fucking work. Tell me what's a fucking work that isn't a work from the fucking next thing, Sure. It's all a fucking work.
Sure.
This has been fantastic.
Absolutely. And communication is key. Not to say, and I'm about to say something caveman cringy, but again, don't care. Like, I learned that communication is paramount. I learned that from my practice wife.
Oh, the old practice wife.
Oh, So, but it's true though. Like I like to crack my jokes, but
sure,
within my humor, there is serious intel and hopefully useful intel to wrestling students or whoever, and vice versa. I keep my eyes and ears open all the time. Like I try to learn.
But as well as I do, you don't get that. You don't get that by not paying attention over life.
Sure.
You absolutely have to get that, right?
If I'm meeting somebody, or if I'm watching a news anchor, I'm watching a clip about a politician, or I'm watching just anything about anything. Again, like I kind of joke and think like, Marx thinking checkers, workers thinking chess. And it's like, I really like, my brain is always such a hornet's nest. Like I see my nightmares or my dreams are pretty boring, but my daydreams, like I see it all. I'm like Tony Stark, like there's 20 million things in front of me right now. Triple H is fighting Donald Duck on this giant pizza over here. Snoopy and Joe Biden are skipping rope over here. Donald Trump is kayaking over here. Hulk Hogan is flexing over here with a bunch of Smurfs. I see it always, all the time.
Yeah.
So just to like dial in your ideas and then just have open minds with stuff and listen to the other people, and then decide, does this sound right? Does this not sound right? And that's wrestling or life or anything, I suppose,
So with that said, then what's next for you? Because you are obviously, and I'm just going to say this because you're old, you're fat, you're bald, right? The career is winding down severely. You know what I mean? Like it does for all of us. And we all have to get to that realization. You know what I mean? So like,
I haven't realized it yet.
Have you made a plan?
I know it's on the horizon, but
so you haven't, do you think you're going to spend the rest of the days and open up your own rescue? You know what I mean? For other people, what is there a plan for Sinn Bodhi?
If I won the lottery, I would have an island full of dogs and cats and tortoises and goats and chickens and everything. But I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon. So my wife is always much better about it than I do. But she'll put those little like the little it's like an Amazon wish list of like goat food or cat medicine or some such, you know, goat oats. I call them goatios, you know, goaty poops, you know, like whatever it is, just to kind of make it easier, because the obviously you know, the easier that is, the more the better we can take care of all these critters. Like I would probably have a decent stash of cash saved if I wasn't spending, like, you would just go shake your head to know how much I spend on goat food, chicken food. You know, I don't even eat the chicken. Like we eat their eggs, which are awesome.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other like thing we can talk about too. Just seeing how like
farm fresh stuff, dude, nothing
farm fresh
better
stuff versus factory or versus like grocery store.
Just the thinness of the shell. You know what I mean? When it comes right out of the coop and you crack it, and it's a much better tasting egg. Yeah. Anyways, that's a different fucking show.
I saw this guy kind of joking about like eggs are the gateway drug to being a conspiracy theorist. You're like, man, if I boiled you eggs straight from the butts of my chickens, or if I boiled you eggs from the fanciest of grocery store, the most free rangiest of whatever eggs from a grocery store, you could tell the difference 10 out of 10 times. 100%. Which leads me in my sort of imagination. Well, I won't call it a conspiracy theory. I just the chess game of life, the shell game of life. I would just think like, if eggs are like that, what else is like that? Like when we grew up, there was no peanut allergies or gluten or this or that or whatever. And, you know, one out of 5 billion bajillion people were autistic or whatever. And now there's so many, you know, malfunctions in the human body all over the place. So why? I don't know, but I'm smart enough to know I don't know much. So I'm smart enough to kind of ask. I'm thinking why. I think when we don't ask why, and I think these days questions are made to be like dirty words, like ask. Why shouldn't you fucking ask?
Sure. As long as you don't, and I'm okay with all of that, as long as you don't spend every dying minute, you know what I mean, trying to come up with a reason. Like it's not, you still have to live your life. You still have to live your life.
There's certainly a healthy medium of like, I'm not that little moth to a flame, city soft tenderfoot that's just going to hope for the best, and I'm not that guy sitting with his binoculars and a shotgun out, you know, in the you know, the big whatever the camo stuff.
The ghoulie suit or whatever they're called. Yeah.
I'm not waiting for Red Dawn either. I'm somewhere healthily in the middle. Like I enjoy my life. I'm a silly guy. I'm passionate about the critters. I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about jumping around, play fighting in spandex, you know, like it pays the bills. It lets me see the planet. And I joke when I fly out or drive out, my wife's like, I'll miss you. Don't you, you know, like, do you have to go so much? And I'm like, hey, if I didn't go, I wouldn't be able to miss you so much. She's like, you motherfucker.
Right.
Like,
Left-handed logic. Left-handed logic. It's the best.
That's right.
Nick, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down. We've been yammering on like a couple of old hens here for the last hour, it seems like, but I could do this for 2-3 hours more.
Oh, dude, you know what I mean? Man. I'd love to catch up with you. Any excuse to catch up with you is cool.
It's fantastic. And, you know, I wish you nothing but the best of success in all that you do, as always. I think that, you know, there's a lot of people out there in the world, especially in the world of professional wrestling, and you know this as well as I do, who are just absolute fucking nutters, who don't have their head on straight. You know what I mean? You are not one of those people.
On that note, the biggest thing that I preach is not, you know, yes, creativity, yes, be an original act. Like, you know, like cover bands don't sell out auditoriums, original acts do. But put all that aside, we'll put a pin in that. Safety. Like I'm always preaching safety. Like, you know, if I sock you or whatever, you'll be just fine. Like I believe the best way to say sorry to an opponent is be so fucking good and so safe. You never have to say sorry. Oops, sorry about your orbital socket. Oops, sorry about your spine, your tooth, your neck, your knee.
Yeah.
No, if there's that, you know, as it is, there's that unwritten rule amongst brothers to leave each other how you found them.
Completely safe. I remember working a match. I can remember working a match. I can remember
What's
working a match with you. I can remember working a match with you where you actually had to fucking remind me because it wasn't visually that I could see. You're like, I'm biting your fingers right now. And I was like, oh yeah. And the same match, this was some one of these like ring and ears fucking shows that we were doing in like Big Mac's horrible ring. And
Sure.
at one point you went to pick me up and I couldn't get up off of the mat because there was a nail sticking through from the backside that had hooked me in the back of my fucking head that we had to pull myself off of this thing to get up in this ring. But it is, it's like if I can't see it, if you don't have that line, you've got to communicate it, right? You know what I mean? Because that's about being safe. That's about being, in control of everything that you do, loving the person that you're in that ring with, and being a good brother. And that goes way beyond wrestling. That's in life in general. And that's just like these talks that I'm having with people that I enjoy, people that I respect, and that I want to have conversations with. That being said, Nick, I want to say thank you once again for taking the time out and doing this. We are up against it, like I said, but we will definitely be doing more of these
Yeah, we'll
down
love it.
the
Anytime.
road.
You let me know. Anytime.
Absolutely.
I can
Everybody,
tell you
thank you
all
so
sorts of-
much.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I can. No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, we can. I'd love just to catch up, and if the rest of the planet happens to be listening, awesome. But I mean,
Even better.
I'd love to hear what you've been doing. I'd love to tell you what I've been doing. So yeah, anytime you want, I'm good to go.
Tremendous.